Hello friends, welcome to Akul Mac Live and I am Chandrakant. And if you're following my videos, I've said in the past that the war between Russia and Ukraine is not about sovereignty. It's about setting up a new world order and new equations between countries. And we will actually analyze today until now how each country has behaved, what are the different types of access each country needs to grind and how this will shape up the new world order. Let's debate. Friends, there is no doubt that Russia has invaded Ukraine, and even Ukraine is not backing down, and the war is brewing. A lot of innocents are dying, and a lot of innocents have become homeless. It is an open fact that this is going on. Yet, we also know, as per my previous video, that the dollar per barrel is going up, and going through the roof. At the same time, the arms companies who are mostly in the West, their share prices is going through the roof again. So while people are affected, their livelihood is lost. In Ukraine, also, the Russian soldiers are dying, but their countries are making money and their GDPs are also increasing multifold. So the whole point is that why people are doing this, especially when the world was coming out from the corona pandemic and they were trying to realign, recalibrate their economy, and certainly this happened. And because of this, the petrol prices have gone up. It's going up, and some people are saying that it may touch up to $300 per barrel. It is going to create problem for, in fact, everyone. If you follow the U.S. news, the normal U.S. citizens are also concerned about the rising fuel prices in the United States. While the war between Ukraine and Russia is going on, in fact, it is escalating, there is propaganda being promoted from both sides. We keep hearing news about who's winning, who's losing, and both sides are claiming that they are winning, and both sides are claiming that other parties are losing. However, between this war, which is mostly in the Europe, mostly localized, world over, the countries are finding new friends. The countries who were enemies before, they are now trying to find the common grounds to develop friendship, and the allies are finding points of discussion between them and trying to move away from each other. So this shows that it's not only Ukraine and Russia, West versus East, it is the entire ecosystem of different countries about their allies, their friendship is actually undergoing a tremendous change. I will actually explain one by one how this is happening. The central to all these changes which are happening today is the oil. And every country needs oil not only to run their machinery, but also it has an indirect impact on the food and other supplies as well, because everything is being transported using oil, and oil is a big thing. Russia is a oil producing country, and the oil price because of this war going up is very good for Russia. In fact, in this conflict, Russia is going to make their GDP 3 times of what they were today. So oil is a big thing. At the same time, the other big country, which is the oil producing country, is Saudi. Their economy is also tripled already because they have the ability to pump oil and also supply. So this is playing a big role. There are other countries like Brazil who have not yet started their oil production in a big way. United States is sitting on the world largest oil reserves. They have not initiated major drilling of the oil in their own country, and they keep buying from their own allies, which are Saudi and the Middle East countries. By the way, in the Middle East, the oil drilling contracts are with the American companies. So the Americans are actually drilling the oil and bringing and selling it to their own citizens. They are not drilling in their own country. So even though the US has the largest oil reserves, they are also impacted by these changes, the increase in oil price. In fact, if you follow the US news, they are saying that in last 30 years, the oil price at the petrol stations is the highest in last 30 years. And people are now started to feel the brunt of this oil. So I think the heart of the problem world over is the oil. Well, the oil producing companies will make money by selling the crude oil to the importers, the countries who do not have oil. By and large, in fact, the entire world needs oil. A lot of countries in Africa, which we are not talking about today explicitly, but then if you look at the country wise, the biggest importer of oil is US, India, and China. In fact, if you talk about India, the 80% of the oil in India is imported from various oil producing countries. And same is the situation with China. The 80% of the oil dependency of China is on the import of oil products. So, nutshell, while these countries are producing oil, the largest importers, which makes the difference in terms of revenue for the global economy, for the oil based economy, are these three countries, which is US, India, and China. So, having made this point that you can produce all the oil in the world, but if you're not able to sell it, even at $300 per barrel, what's the point in increasing the price? If the countries of the consumer countries like India, China, and US do not buy in a big way at a higher price, it will not result in any revenue. So basically, what is happening is that Russia is disturbed by these sanctions because the price which is going high is okay, is good for them. But if because of sanctions, they are not able to sell their produce of oil to either China or India, I'm sure they will not be shipping it to United States from now on, because US has already said that they will not buy any petroleum products from Russia. So the only market, large market remains for Russia is India and China. So if this is happening, obviously, the dependency of these two large countries, which comprise of nearly 50% of the population of the world, would depend on countries like Russia and Iran, because of these sanctions. If Russia find it very tough to sell their product, then the increase in price will not yield anything for Russia. And therefore, when I say that the oil is impacting the entire world, the new equations are going to come up. And in case of India, the dependency on Russia is also very high because of the defense equipment dependency that India has on the Russia. So it's we have two acts to grind of our own, where we have dependency on the because of the defense expenditure that we have for security, for our safety on Russia. At the same time, we need to buy oil. So I think this shows straight away that the equation will emerge differently during this war between these countries, which is predominantly US, India, China, and Russia. While the price is increasing, but if there is no market, as I said in the beginning, if Russians are not able to convert the opportunity into revenue, it doesn't mean anything for them. While this is going on, we have knowledge. In fact, we know that for last 10 years, US sanctioned Venezuela because Venezuela was not listening to them, and they put similar sanctions on Venezuela. The Venezuelan economy completely crashed. In fact, last year they did not had people of the country of Venezuela did not had money to buy even medicines. They were actually getting aid to buy medicines even. So their economy is so badly affected by the US sanctions. And by the way, Venezuela has one of the largest oil reserves. They also have the ability to pump the petroleum out from the ground. So now Venezuela finds a good opportunity to come out of these sanctions, because Venezuela don't like these sanctions. It has shattered their economy completely. So you would wonder that what Venezuela got to do with this whole thing. The Venezuela, very very far off country from the action which is happening in the Europe, is suddenly woken up, and there's a lot of politics going on. Venezuela has already said that they can actually pump extra crude oil to stabilize the price issue, especially for the Americans. And as a goodwill gesture, they have also released two prisoners from their prisons, American prisoners. to get out of this sanction to impress the United States. So who knows what is going on here? There could be a chance that the US may lift sanctions which have been imposed on Venezuela, which has destroyed Venezuelan economy. So this is a new change, and it's all happening because of oil. Because if you sanction all the oil producing countries, what will happen to the rest of the world? Because the rest of the world depends on oil, and therefore even Americans and the West knows that they cannot keep sanctioning oil and gas across the world. It is going to create a lot of anarchy. So this is a new question which is emerging, and Venezuela may come out of sanctions and they may start supplying the crude oil to Americas to start with, and Europe. That will actually reduce the price that impact the citizens of these regions, which is Europe predominantly and Americas. The other equation that we have to talk about is, as you can see in this picture, that the three leaders of three countries, which is Russia, Turkey and Iran, shaking hands. Whereas if you talk about only Turkey and Iran, they have been anti each other because of their religious belief, mostly because Turkey is a Sunni Muslim domination and Iran is the Shia Muslim domination, and they don't like each other and they have been anti. And if you look at Turkey also, Turkey has been NATO ally. The largest base of NATO is in Turkey, even though only 3% of the land of Turkey is in Europe, but they have inclination towards NATO and towards the West. Yet they cannot ignore Russia, because in Turkey the largest number of tourists that visit and add to the economy of Turkey is from Russia. At the same time, as you can see, they are warming up to Iran, because the Iran now wants to leverage this situation and wants to come out of the sanctions, the American sanctions. And if that happens, then the equation will completely change, because Iran will then get very powerful and it will be supported by another ally, which is Turkey, a new ally, and which is very troublesome for the other neighboring countries in the region. I will explain in a bit, but you should know, friends, that the Biden administration have shown that they are going to lift some sanctions on Iran just 2 days in the war. Just 2 days, on 26th of February, they have shown signs of thaw, and they might bring Iran out of the sanctions. And that is going to create a major event globally. It will create a new equation, and Iran is also very close to Russia. So it will definitely have an impact on the geopolitical situations. As of now, it appears that Israel may be the most affected countries. The way their leaders are going, taking the flight and meeting Putin as well as the Western allies. At the same time, they are also becoming friendly with Turkish, who has been their enemies. And the biggest worry is Iran sanctions being lifted, because Iran is a large country. It is a oil producing countries, and if they come out of the sanctions, they will have all the cash with them to propagate the Shia militia against Israel. So Israel is in a very tight spot, and they are trying to build a new narrative for their own safety. And that is why they are trying to meet Ukrainians, they're trying to meet Putin, they're meeting Germans, they're meeting Americans, and also Turkish allies. Now, the Turkey seems to have brought them together with their old enemy Egypt. So there could be a dialogue happening between Israel, Egypt, and Turkey, which is something new. Lifting of sanctions on Iran is also a big problem for other Middle Eastern countries, and Saudi and UAE, they are very concerned about the Iran coming out of the sanctions. It's not because they are also oil producing, they will compete, but I think it's because of their anti position they have. There has been a long drawn Cold War sorts of situation between Iran and the Saudis, and therefore they don't want sanctions to be lifted. There's another reason that the Americans are moving too fast, too rapidly into Ukraine, and that is what is also worrisome for Saudi Saudi government and also UAE. This is all changing the equation. We have heard that Biden tried to contact both UAE and the Saudis and both the countries have snubbed and refused to take call from Biden. However, they have spoken, both of them have spoken to Russian, and therefore this depicts that there could be something new happening in this area. Well, they are not taking the call simply because I mean, the American president's call, Mr. Biden's call, simply because they may fear that Biden will ask them to produce more oil, which they don't want to do. So I think they may be avoiding. Nevertheless, there are the concerns these countries have against Iran, and that is why the new equations may be coming forward. And especially, it is very surprising that the Israel is now getting friendly with almost half of the Islamic world, which is quite surprising. Now, let's talk about the Europe. This war is going on between Ukraine and Russia is in the European theater, and EU is the biggest entity in Europe. Well, EU is completely dependent on electricity production on the Russian gas. They also need oil because none of these countries are oil producing. To run their business, to run their economy, to run their trucks, trains, anything, EU requires petroleum. So until such time that the Venezuela ramps up, Iran ramps up, US start pumping a lot of oil and bring the equation in a different side, EU is completely dependent on the Russian oil and gas, or oil and gas from some other source at a lower cost. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for EU people to sustain their economy. This is a fact, and that is why the largest member of EU, which is Germany, they decided a couple of years back that they will not be using nuclear-based energy source, and therefore the largest member of EU do not have any nuclear power plant, which is Germany. And Germany is completely dependent on gas from Russia to produce electricity. So the Germany and Hungary are the first two nations who said that they will not be putting sanctions on Russia. So the cracks are already visible. It is, it is not realistic to put so many sanctions on a particular country because you are putting sanctions on Russia. But what will happen to the rest of the world? Rest of the world will start feeling the heat, as I explained in the beginning of the video. So this is what is going on. The EU is also not going to be existing alone. They will have to find their new equations. They will have to find who can help them in this time of crisis. Considering all these signs which are visible right now, even after only 2 weeks of the war, the cracks are appearing everywhere. New equations are being thought about, new negotiations are being talked about. So I believe that the world will get divided into not two blocks but multiple blocks. Multiple different organizations may emerge in the world today, and from my point of view, considering the large territories, India and China will resolve their issues and then become friends along with Russia and Iran, and that could be one of the largest chunk of the new world order which may emerge. And you can call it East, you can call it South of East or Southwest Asia, South, East and West and North, Eurasia, whatever you want to call it. In my opinion, this is one block which is going to emerge in a long run. Again, this is not going to be everlasting. Who knows what happens after 10 years. So friends, this is what I feel after 2 weeks of Ukraine crisis. I'm just analyzing what we have been seeing, how people are reacting, how different leaders are talking to each other, what are the cracks which are visible, what new friendships which people are talking about, how the world is resolving their matters in order to solve their current crisis. Because obviously Ukraine-Russia crisis will create a lot of crisis in the world with regard to petroleum. Also, the second crisis which may emerge mostly in African countries and also countries who import their food also, which will be regarding the food products. So I think my analysis is based on what I've been seeing. Let me know what you feel. If you have an opinion, do write in. If you don't have if you don't agree to any of these points, still write in. For today, I like to say goodbye, only to catch you again in the next one.